Do you want to see a Justice League movie on the big screen? Do you want it to be good as the Justice League TV show from back then that was really freaking awesome? Well, it's gonna be made by Zack Snyder. You know, the same guy that made Batman v Superman, which didn't live up to the hype that it deserved. Yeah, well, that's gonna happen. Justice League, a movie that's supposed to come out later this year on the 7th of November. Now, I'm actually pretty excited for this movie, but given the whole history of the whole DCEU, it feels so weird saying that. Given the history of this whole cinematic universe, we've only had one legitimately good movie, two movies that were okay, one movie that was disappointing. So of course, some people have their concerns. And similar to what I did with the whole Transformers video of will Transformers suck, which by the way actually did kind of suck according to a lot of the reviews, especially on YouTube. Anyways, I'm gonna do something similar. So we're gonna briefly talk about the previous movies from DCEU, talk about the issues those movies had, the good things about them, the improvements they made later on, and then we'll finally get to the trailer and talk about any good things that I see from the trailer and possible issues I see gonna happen in the movie. And of course, obviously, this whole video is gonna have spoilers on Man of Steel, Batman v Superman, Suicide Squad, and Wonder Woman. So of course, don't watch the video if you want to hear any spoilers in this. So let's start off with the first movie on our list, Man of Steel, another Superman reboot. Anyways, of course, this is a Superman origin story showing how Clark was sent from the planet of Krypton to Earth, showing his upbringings and everything. Now, this movie was okay in my opinion. The good things that I like about it was, for one, his origin story was interesting, and I'm glad it wasn't too slow. It wasn't so fast and it wasn't too slow, it was kind of in the middle. The only issue I had with the origin story was his father, and when his father died in the movie, it felt unnecessary the first time I saw it. Now, I understand why he did it. He basically didn't want Clark to expose his powers to the world, and that makes sense because the world knew about him. They would lose their minds, but I don't know, it always felt unnecessary. Plus, Clark is always thinking about his father every single time, like another Spider-Man. The movie also had some really cool fight scenes, especially when Clark is fighting against other Kryptonians, including Zod. That was freaking cool. The visuals are good. Some of the bad things that I didn't like about it was, well, for one, the supportive characters, not really much to talk about. One supportive character that I do want to talk about a little bit is Lois Lane, played by Amy Adams. Now, I don't know, it's just her character seems underwhelming. Like, when I think of Lois Lane, I think of a lady who's sassy, who's confident, and is always trying to get a story no matter what, even if it kills her, and always getting in the most dangerous situations. If you want a good depiction of Lois Lane, just look at the Superman animated series. That was fun, and I liked that version of Lois Lane. Here, Amy Adams, she's confident and she's trying to get her story, but I don't know, she just seems kind of dull. Though, to be fair, her scene with Clark's father in the whole ship scene, that was actually really cool. Seriously, we need this guy to pop up again and just be in a ship and help the Justice League. That's gonna be awesome. But those are just minor complaints. The main issue I had with this movie was, well, actually Superman himself. See, Zack has already said how he wanted to make his cinematic universe a little more realistic. And here's the thing, while making a movie realistic, having these ideas tied to realism is an interesting idea and does give some good ideas. Realism is completely different from Superman's character. Superman is an idealistic character. When we think of Superman, we think of a guy who's basically trying to help everyone he can, no matter what. And of course that sounds like a cliche hero, but it's Superman. He's like the OG when it comes to superheroes. Superman is literally an ideal for superheroes and, well, everyone actually. He inspires people. That's what makes him so ideal. But when you add realism into it, it kind of messes things up. Like I said earlier, Superman doesn't want to hurt people. and he wants to protect people. Cool, no problem. So, when he was fighting against Zod in the city, he didn't try to get Zod out of the city. Instead, he fought him in the city where hundreds, probably thousands of civilians died. Then there's the ending scene where he finally kills General Zod in order to protect some humans. This scene had me conflicted for multiple reasons. It's interesting to see Superman of all people kill a villain, but that's not his character. That conflicts with Superman's character entirely. And there's also the fact that Superman could have easily just flew up and got him to not shoot his heat vision at humans. I mean, it's obvious. And this is a major problem because it conflicts with Superman's character, and because of that, that's why many people either liked the movie or hate the movie, because of Superman. You made Superman more of a realistic character, which he's not. Superman's supposed to inspire people even though he's saving people by killing people in the process. Do you see the mix up here? Still, Man of Steel was a good movie in my opinion. It was okay, but of course the main issue was Superman. But anyways, next up is Batman v Superman, and oh boy. As you could tell from the beginning of the video, I'm not the biggest fan of Batman v Superman. But we'll get to that in a moment. First, let's talk about the plot. Of course, as the title implies, this is a movie that introduces Batman to the whole cinematic universe and puts him to fight against Superman. Now, what are the good things about this movie? Well, for one, seeing Batman fight Superman on the big screen for the first time ever is really awesome. Also, Ben Affleck and Gal Gadot, I don't know how to pronounce it. I hear people pronounce it differently. I'm just gonna say Gal Gadot. Anyways, Ben and Gal played their characters really well as Batman and Wonder Woman. They were actually interesting and fun to see. And of course, the fight between Batman and Superman was actually pretty cool for the 5 to 10 minutes that we saw it. As for the things I didn't like, there are multiple stuff. For one, Jesse Eisenberg as Lex Luthor was terrible. When I think of Lex Luthor, I think of a professional businessman who's always exploiting people, good or bad, for their resources in order to make him or his company stronger. He's the guy who has the balls to go toe-to-toe with an alien who could kill him in literally a millisecond. Jesse Eisenberg as Lex Luthor is not manipulative as the Lex I know. Jesse here, he's a prick. He's annoying as hell in the movie, and his plot to get rid of Superman was actually pretty confusing and had plot holes, and God, I just don't like him. Why couldn't you just get like Walter White to be Lex Luthor? That would have been way better. Everyone asks for it, why didn't you do it? The only two scenes that I actually liked with Jesse in it was a scene where he was on the rooftop with Superman and he was manipulating Superman to fight against Batman. And then there was the other scene where he was in the courthouse with Superman and he basically made it look that Superman was the one who destroyed the courthouse, even though it obviously wasn't. But that's it. He's just annoying as hell in the movie and I just don't like him. And then there's also Superman again in this movie. In the last movie, Man of Steel, I talked about how Zack's realism conflicts with Superman's character, but here Superman is just boring. One thing I do like about his character in the movie is how people actually see him. Of course, people know about him now, they see how powerful he is, and of course it's interesting to see how people either treat him as a god, because if God forbid an alien comes down now and is as powerful as Superman, there'll be either one, people who treat him as a god thinking he's the all-powerful savior, or people who are just terrified of him and wants to kill him. And it's interesting to see it in the movie, but other than that, Henry Cavill as Superman in this movie was just depressing. He was always moping around with his Tobey Maguire crying, and then him remembering his father once again, which by the way, that scene just felt very forced and unnecessary. But worst of all about this character is he's not inspiring as the Superman we know and love. I mean, you only had this guy in one movie before, and again, it was alright, and then you decide to kill him off in this movie, even though you haven't really built up on his character too much in this movie in the first place. There wasn't much really good scenes with this character in my opinion. it didn't feel like an interesting continuation of Superman's character aside from, again, the citizens' view on him. That was the only thing I really liked, the citizens' view on him. And then when he finally died, I was conflicted because the good thing about it was, of course, it had many references to the death of Superman story. We all know that from the comics. It was interesting to see that. In fact, when I saw him pushing Doomsday into space, I was kind of geeking out because, of course, that's another reference which was really cool. But when Superman actually dies, it's underwhelming because, one, he wasn't all that much of an interesting character to begin with, and two, we all know he's gonna come back. It's obvious. I mean, come on, hell, they even made a poster with him with the entire Justice League, so why should we really care in the first place? Again, he didn't feel inspiring, he just felt dull. There's also the minor complaint of Lois Lane again. She tries to be a little more sassy and even more confident compared to the last movie, but she was not important. I mean, they tried to make her important by learning that, oh, it's Lex Luthor who is actually trying to bait Superman, but it's no big deal. And worst of all, there was one scene with Lois Lane where she was trying to get the kryptonite spear and she gets trapped, and I'm just like, why are you here? The worst part is when Flash decides to travel back in time. Yes, that happened in the movie. And Flash tells Bruce, Lois is the key. I'm like, dear God, please don't make her important in Justice League movie. Please, she's not important, please. But the major issue with this movie is the fact that it does too much. Basically, we all know that Zack was trying to catch up with the MCU, and that's impossible. The MCU has created multiple movies showing these different characters, making many solo movies for each character and then bringing them together in one team. It was a great development and it's still continuing. But with Zack now, he decides to do multiple things in this movie in order to catch up with the MCU in one movie. In fact, let me list them off right here. First, introduce Batman, introduce Wonder Woman, set up the whole Justice League movie, set up the big villain known as Darkseid along with Steppenwolf over there, introduce Doomsday, introduce Lex Luthor, even though no one really gives a damn about this guy right now. Make the death of Superman story, and then focus on Batman v Superman, even though the movie is just supposed to be about Batman v Superman, which, by the way, I never understood why it was always just a V rather than just versus. Can someone explain that to me? But yeah, this movie just tried to put too much in this thing, and that's a big problem. If you don't focus on one plot, you're just gonna have one big mess. All of these plot ideas are interesting, but if you put all of them together, you won't be able to focus on each of them and use each of them to their full potential. Then of course there's the whole meme of Martha, but come on, we all know about that. Let's get over it already. Overall, to me, Batman v Superman was disappointing. I know there's some people who like it, and if you do, that's good, but I didn't like it. In fact, when I first watched the movie in the theaters and came out, that was one of the few times I left and felt so disappointed. Like I felt like there was something missing, like I was not complete after watching this movie, because it didn't really live up to the hype that it was showing before the movie. I mean, come on, we all know there was a lot of hype for that movie, and it didn't live up to it. Then there's also the fact that the movie is literally dark. Like, it's both figuratively dark and literally dark. I mean, seriously, look at the color here. I mean, the only way to make Batman darker right now is to make him black. But anyways, let's get off of Batman v Superman, because if this keeps up, it'll just be a little rant video, which we don't need right now. Moving on, we have Suicide Squad. In this movie, a secret organization decides to use supervillains for dangerous tasks and basically use them as cannon fodder, as they have bombs in their necks, so if they don't obey, they'll just kill them. And of course, they're led by Amanda Waller. Now, personally, I like this movie, and this movie is very controversial. There's either people who like this movie or people who hate this movie, which is actually understandable for many reasons. I actually like the movie for one, its soundtrack. I mean, let's be honest, my favorite one is actually Heathens. Second favorite is actually one from Rick Ross. And then third favorite is Sucker for Pain, which could have been better if it weren't for Lil Wayne saying some random crap that really Lil Wayne. But anyways, back to the movie. Now, the good things I actually like about this movie, which is also an improvement, is the humor. For Man of Steel and Batman v Superman, it was gloomy and just felt depressing sometimes. It felt like it was doing too much to be dark. And it's understandable that Zack was trying to be different from the MCU, which is more family friendly, but they were trying too hard and it was obvious. But in Suicide Squad, you get more humor, which is actually pretty funny. I enjoyed the movie when I was watching it with some friends in the theaters. So good, you improve on that. And I actually like some of the characters, like Amanda Waller, played by Viola Davis. She was terrifying, which is perfect. Amanda Waller is one of the 3 people in the DC universe who's very manipulative, aside from Lex Luthor and the Joker, of course. She will make you do her bidding however she sees fit. She will blackmail you, and she doesn't give a crap who you are, whether you're a villain right to her face about to kill her. She would not flinch. She's terrifying. She's like the person who you would not sit aside because you know she's about to do some shit. That she's about to do something. I mean, hell, even Harley decides to call her the devil of all people. And speaking of which, Margot Robbie as Harley Quinn, she did a really great job. Harley Quinn was actually really funny in this movie. And I know there's a lot of people who call her really sexist in this movie, but come on, really, this is Harley we're talking about. She has always been sexualized. Even when she first debuted in the Batman animated series, she was sexualized. Even in the comics, she is sometimes half naked in those comics. Harley is the type of character who is insane and sexy, and she doesn't care who looks at her at any way. She's just insane, and I love her character. She is actually really funny. And Margot Robbie did a good job as her. Will Smith as Deathshot was really entertaining actually, with some Will Smith humor of course, and he was fun to see. Even Jai Courtney as Captain Boomerang was actually pretty entertaining, which was surprising for me because I personally don't like Captain Boomerang as a character, but he was actually really funny in the movie. And also Diablo, played by Jay Hernandez, was actually a really interesting character with the most serious backstory, so of course that was fun to see. And last but not least, my favorite character of all, Killer Croc. I don't care what you say, you can have your opinion, but Killer Croc was the funniest person in this movie. I swear to God, he was like the blackest person in that movie. So yes, another good thing about this movie is they have interesting and funny characters, which is great, and of course a great improvement from Batman v Superman. Their characters are interesting and just fun to see. However, there are some characters who we just don't give a damn about, like Enchantress and what's his name again, Rick Flag. We didn't care about them too much because Enchantress was part of a cliche plot of the whole shooting a beam into the sky, which we've seen multiple times. We can make that joke how many times already. And I also wish I was able to see more of Katana's character. She's actually one of my favorite characters from the comics. Who knows, maybe we'll see her a little more in the future. One character that brings a lot of conflict to this movie is actually Jared Leto as Joker. It's either people like him, or people hate him, or people just meh about him. And honestly, I'm just meh. When Jared Leto kept teasing us of Joker's character, we were actually really interested to see him. He seems so invested in the whole character. And when we saw it in the movie, we didn't know what to think of it because one, we didn't get to see much of Joker because of Enchantress being the main villain, and that's terrible to do, honestly. I mean, for the Suicide Squad trailers, a lot of people thought that Joker was going to be the main villain. I personally knew that Enchantress had to be the villain at the time because clearly when you watch the trailers, you see Joker in the same scenes over and over, and Enchantress not being with the Suicide Squad, so yeah, I knew something was up. So for one, Joker wasn't shown as much as we wanted him to, so I don't want to say he's terrible yet, only until I see a good amount of his character a little more, like in the upcoming Batman movie that some people have been talking about. Maybe I could give a better opinion on him. But another reason why is because he gives some interesting things, like how he thinks about Harley so much. In fact, he thinks of Harley almost like a drug in a sort of way. He needs his Harley, but he does some unnecessary and questionable things, like putting knives in a circle on the floor, which makes no sense. Honestly, I don't know how to feel about his character yet. As you could tell from what I've been saying, this movie has some good things I like about it. I like its humor, I like some of its characters, but its main issues being a conflicting characters that we really couldn't give a damn about, and a cliche plot. It's kind of like having some good milk. You put it in a blender, you got some spoiled milk, you mix it with the other milk, mix them both up, and what do you have? Spoiled milk. This movie had good ideas, but because of its issues and its bad ideas or things that they missed out on, the ending product wasn't as good as it could have been. But overall, I still like Suicide Squad even better than Batman vs Superman, so I was okay with it. And finally, let's get on to the first legitimately good movie that everyone could agree on is actually good: Wonder Woman. Now, I did a review on Wonder Woman before, but to sum it all up, Wonder Woman was a good movie for a few reasons. Number one, it gave good development for the character Wonder Woman. It started off when she was a child, and we get to see her grow up and mature in this movie. In fact, this whole movie is basically based on a flashback or seeing Wonder Woman's past. Wonder Woman's actually inspiring and an interesting character. We even have some supportive characters who are not too important, but at the same time, they're interesting. They're actually fun to see. So they're not all so boring and dull. They also develop Steve Trevor's character, and when he dies at the end of the movie, we actually care about him because they develop his character well, right, Superman? It has some cool action scenes, especially at the end of the movie, and of course, it has some good humor in it. The best part about this movie, which is kind of similar to Suicide Squad, they're not trying to be dark like Man of Steel and Batman v Superman. They're just doing their thing. They're being a little more lighthearted, giving some humor, but at the same time giving some interesting themes. I already talked about it in my review, talking about how Wonder Woman matures in this movie and understand that the world is not black and white like she thinks it really is. She's inspiring, and she's pretty much like the Superman of this movie, not just because of her power, but also because of her personality. In the end, Wonder Woman was a good movie, and I'm glad I watched that. So after this long video, we finally finished the 4 movies of the DCEU. It had its rocky start, but it improved after each movie, especially with Wonder Woman, of course. So now we go on to the Justice League trailers. At the time I'm making this video, there's been 2 trailers so far. And the good things I see about this movie is, for one, it has some humor in it, especially from Aquaman and Flash. Flash being pretty much like the Tom Holland of this universe. The costumes don't look as dull as Batman v Superman. It visually looks good, and of course, there's the high anticipation for Darkseid, which I honestly can't wait to see in this movie. The main thing I see going wrong in this movie are the characters. Now, similarly to Batman v Superman, it focused on multiple plots, and well, because of that, it wasn't able to focus on each plot to its full potential. Now in this movie, it's similar, but I'm more specifically talking about the characters. We've seen a little bit of Batman before, we've seen Wonder Woman in her own standalone movie, but what about the others? Cyborg, Aquaman, Flash? We haven't seen them develop. We haven't seen these characters yet, so of course this is going to be a new experience. So in this movie, you have to focus on the whole anticipation of Darkseid, bringing this new villain in the mix, but also showing off these different characters and a little bit of their origin, at least. Now, I understand what this movie is trying to do. It's doing something similar to the New 52 comic that came out a while back. Now, in the first Justice League New 52 comic, all the members of the Justice League, Green Lantern, Flash, Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, Aquaman, these guys met each other for the very first time in the first issue and were forced to team up against Darkseid. Now, this movie is doing something similar, and in a way I kind of like it because it's different from what Marvel did. Marvel tried to develop most of their characters, specifically Iron Man, Captain America, Thor, we saw Black Widow. As for the rest of the characters, Hawkeye and Hulk, it was the first time for us seeing them, but we generally knew these characters. But for Justice League, we only know 2 of them and the rest are new. So I hope we get to see a good amount of these characters. It doesn't have to be everything because of course we're gonna get the standalone movies later on, but I hope we don't see the movie trying to focus a little too much on one character's backstory than the other. Try to make it equal enough and make those characters interesting and entertaining, especially Superman. I just hope this guy improves a lot in this movie. But overall, this is what I think of the DCEU overall, and what I think about the Justice League trailer that's coming out. And man, that was a lot to talk about. Overall, I'm still excited about the Justice League movie. I hope it goes well, and I'll Catch you guys later. Peace.